Well, welcome to Voice Essential Specialist Sessions, and my name is Dr. Dan, and I'm pretty excited today because we're starting the very first session of our specialist sessions, and I get to interview a good friend and colleague, Melissa Forbes from USQ in Toowoomba, University of Southern Queensland. So, without further ado, let's get this show on the road.
Sound check. Check one, check two.
Hey Melissa, welcome to Voice Essential Specialist Sessions.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to have you as my first guest because, I don't know whether I've ever had the opportunity to say this, but I so much admire what you do and your professionalism and the contribution you make to so many students. And you haven't simply made them up at USQ. You also have taught privately. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you do up at USQ and yeah.
Well, I moved up here, it was 2009 I began at USQ, and prior to that I was teaching privately in Brisbane and teaching as part of the Young Con team. And when I moved up here, it just so happened that there was an opening for a singing tutor. And so I came on board as a casual staff back then. And the program at the time was very much in its infancy. So it was a Bachelor of Creative Arts and they had theatre and music kind of under that umbrella as well as some other discipline areas. So I actually was teaching not only music students but theatre students. And as time progressed, I became more involved in the music section, if you like, of that program, to the point where I actually then began to rewrite the program, the music program. And I can now say as of next year, we have a brand new music program, which is a contemporary music program within the Bachelor of Creative Arts at USQ. So whilst my focus when I first came was all about teaching people how to sing, that has become less and less of a focus as time has gone on because I've become more involved in the broader music program.
And how have you found, I guess, moving from being so specifically focused on voice into a broader section? It's something I'm hoping to really unpack for people who subscribe to the YouTube channel here. This idea of a portfolio career. How have you gone in making that shift where you've been so focused on voice to now being, quite broad?
Yeah, look, it's been challenging, and I must say I do miss being able to really just focus on voice. I miss having the opportunity and the time to, spend poring over articles and, keeping up with all the latest information. And in actual fact, I started my PhD topic on a voice science topic. So that was 2011. And I was all set to run experiments and look at mixed voice, which is something that not many people have really looked at in any great detail. But because of the way I was moving in terms of my work here, it was really becoming unfeasible to do a topic so specialised like that. So I then changed my topic to something about the way that people learn music collaboratively. But, just even spending those first few months looking at a voice topic in such great detail was just, it was great. I could do that all day, every day, as I'm sure you could too.
Yeah. So tell me, you still perform, and I'll show some performance videos of you over the top of our talking today. But you got into performance. How did you originally get into singing, and what drove you to want to study it and look at it so directly, or be involved in singing so directly?
Yeah. Well, I actually didn't really start until I was about 28. And prior to that, I was working in the law for a number of years. And that's what I'd studied at university as well as English literature. So I really just had to be honest with myself when I got to that age, and I just made a pact with myself that by the time I was 30, I would be absolutely moving away from that career and into a career in music and specifically singing.
Oh, take me anywhere, I don't care. Driving me your car. Oh, please don't drop me home because it's not my home. It's there when I'm welcome no more.
And it was just a matter of having to just listen to what my instinct had been telling me all along, really, which was that this is what I should be doing. And it's interesting now because where I teach, I seem to be attracting people who are in a similar situation. So we've got a number of mature age students here who have done many other things, but have had this kind of, gnawing feeling inside of them that they've always wanted to sing and to study music in depth. And so we're getting those types of people into our program, which is good because I can totally relate to where those people are at.
Yeah. It's something I actually get a lot in my studio here in Brisbane as well, is that there's a lot of, it seems to be that, somewhere between the 30s and the 40s, they've done their career, they're very involved in whatever they are, but they just need that creative outlet, and some of them want to pursue it in a more considered way, and maybe doing a university course, or many of them just arrive in a voice studio like mine and want to get some singing lessons and do some performance. What caused you personally to make, that it's a big step, isn't it, to go from, okay, you're a successful lawyer doing your career.
I don't know about successful, but yeah. I wasn't putting my soul into it.
It's a big step to, because, when you've got an established career in your 30s, to make that financial step, to want to pursue, let's face it, for most people, the music scene is not going to be as financially rewarding as maybe their current money cow is. What was it for you that said, no, I'm going to go for this?
Well, I just wanted to be happy. And I wasn't happy, and I knew it wasn't going to get any better. And I just had a deep kind of abiding passion for music and for singing. And, I've seen lots of people go through their lives and just do jobs by, a sense of obligation. And I just didn't want to be like that. And I knew that it was going to come with a financial cost, which has been, significant, that's for sure. But I've been lucky that I've had a partner beside me the whole time who's really helped to support me make that transition and support me through the times when I wasn't really earning very much at all. I can imagine that for people who are on their own and who perhaps already have significant debt, that it could be almost impossible to try and make that type of transition. The timing was just fine when I decided to do it because I didn't have a lot of debt and I had someone else there kind of helping me. But I just at the moment I've got someone who's in their 50s who's looking to do this. And you can imagine when you've got a mortgage and you're a single person at that age, that's a pretty big step to make. But I think that just speaks to the depth of passion that people have about this topic.
Yeah, certainly. And what you ended up going down the road of jazz vocals. I think I'm recollecting correctly.
That's right.
And I should mention to people, we met each other during uni, didn't we? Down at the Queensland Conservatorium.
I think you actually finished when I was there, but you were, or maybe you were doing a...
Melissa, have we ever finished?
Of course not. But, you finished your degree.
I had moved on from the bachelor's, that's for certain. I guess, what was it about jazz voice that interested you? I'm a pop sort of adult contemporary rock kind of guy, and you're driven by jazz, and I kind of want to use this as to segue into one of the topics we wanted to talk about today, and that was the whole contemporary versus classical issue. So many people have been fed the line that if you want to learn to sing, you've got to do classical, or and today there's even another bit of a line being drawn that if you want to learn to sing, you've got to learn to sing jazz first, and then you should learn other what for you, what was it about jazz? And then if you wouldn't mind unpacking your thoughts about the whole classical contemporary thing or jazz contemporary thing.
Yep. Well, actually, I auditioned for classical at the con because I had been having some private lessons for a couple of years because that was the only type of singing lesson I knew was classical singing. And I auditioned for the classical program, and I got into that. But they did say during the interview, have you thought about contemporary voice? Because they could obviously sense that, maybe I had more of a natural leaning that way. And look, this was kind of, I'll give myself cut myself some slack here. This was at a time when, the internet wasn't what it is now in terms of information. So I didn't even know that there was a contemporary, jazz option at the con at that time. So when they said that, I was like, oh, wow, okay, contemporary. They kept saying contemporary. And I'm like, okay, contemporary, that sounds great. And I really actually didn't even know it was a jazz program. I'd never listened to jazz before. I wasn't drawn to jazz. I didn't have a passion for jazz, none of that. I just fudged my way through the audition because I happened to sing around midnight. And that was just sheer luck. And I remember Louise, who was she's the piano lecturer there, she's going, oh, yes, I love Thelonious Monk. And I'm like, yeah, I love him too. I don't know who it is, but I really had no idea. But anyway, I got into that one. So then I had the option of, which way do I want to go? And I really felt that if I had chosen classical, I would have been acting under that sense of obligation again to do the proper thing. So I just went, this time I'm going to go with what my gut's telling me, and that's to go down the jazz route, even though I don't really know what that means. So yeah, that all happened really without a lot of, intention on my part. But since then, I've certainly had, jazz is just so fascinating in terms of the way that people use their voices in that genre. And I haven't actually heard the whole argument that, you should learn jazz first. I'm not across that one.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Why don't you unpack the whole idea of the classical versus contemporary thing as far as you understand it and the way you come to experience it. Certainly, when I also first auditioned into the classical department at the con, I actually got in. I still don't know how. And then transferred across into contemporary at a later point. I also wouldn't have known who Thelonious Monk was before I started the jazz course at the con. But I was very conscious at the time of this, real, these two departments clashing heads. Were you conscious of the same thing at the time?
No, not really. I mean, I didn't have anything to do with the classical singers until, after when I did postgraduate stuff in the pedagogy courses. No, see, this is where I think I'm a little bit unusual, and this was brought to my attention when I studied with Jeannie Lavetrie in 2011, and I attended her course. Was that she found it amazing that I had never had really full-on classical training. And that, she found that unusual that anybody could kind of get through without having that experience. Now, I did have some private classical lessons, but in terms of my university education, it was all totally contemporary. And it's fun, it's amazing to think that even in this day and age that it's unusual for someone to just have done contemporary singing. Because there's still very much, and I think it's probably even more pronounced in the US, that a lot of the undergraduate programs there, a lot of the college programs are based on classical singing and singing Western art music. So in a way, I think we're very much on the the vanguard of this whole idea of having contemporary singing as a discipline in its own right. And I think we even have a reputation, particularly in the US. I don't know about Europe, but Australia has a reputation as being, quite cutting edge in that regard. So I think that's something that we can be really proud of.
I think for some of our viewers, people who are watching this video, I wonder whether you might take a moment to unpack what you see as the distinction. Some people are going contemporary, classical. What's the difference? Can you unpack for us, what you see as the major differences between the two disciplines?
I don't like to talk too much about classical singing because I don't know much about it. But I think in terms of your intention as an artist, I think the intentions seem to be quite different. In any contemporary style, but particularly in styles like jazz, you're really searching to find your own voice.
Let's not make this a tug of war. Together we'll find peace if we surrender.
Whereas I get the impression in classical music that there are a set of ideals, ideal kind of aesthetic standards and sounds that you're constantly striving to attain, which is quite different. They're very different aesthetics. And I was always drawn towards the idea of finding my own voice. And I know that people can do that within classical repertoire as well. It's just done in a very different way. So to me, that's one of the big differences without even getting into technical stuff. And it's a mindset, it's a way of approaching music that they're very different. And one's certainly not better than the other, they're just different.
Would there be one particular technical thing that you would put your finger on and say, this I think is a difference?
Well, obviously registration I think is very different for contemporary singers. We live mostly, and I'll use the terms chest and head just for ease of reference. Female contemporary singers spend their time in chest voice, and that's very different to female classical singers. So that's one obvious difference. And there's lots of different, lots of others. Breath management's very different. Either the use of vibrato or not, all of those types of things. The whole idea of learning to sing classical music and then being able to sing anything, I do think is it has lost currency in a lot of singing teacher circles.
I don't have an easy segue about this, but the other thing that we wanted to talk about, that you and I had talked about, and that is, when people are searching for a singing teacher, I'm a big advocate for people, if they want to do contemporary singing. Here's the segue. If they want to do contemporary singing, they should find a contemporary singing coach. If they want to do classical, equally they should find a classical singing teacher. And look, there are those rare people out there that do both. But I stress, I think that they're a rare commodity, a rare breed. But what, I guess the one thing I wanted to talk to you about, and that is, it's also my belief that no one singing teacher has all the answers. There's no one person that is God's gift to singing teacher in a completely whole way. How do you sit with that kind of thought?
Oh, well, I think that's a very sensible thing to say, because we can't know everything about the voice in all its myriad uses. I think I was going to pick up on something that you said there. The idea of, if you want to learn contemporary, go to a contemporary teacher, want to learn classical, go to a classical teacher. What Jeannie says about that is that if as a teacher you don't make the sounds that you are teaching, then you shouldn't teach those sounds. And I think that's a really nice, simple way of thinking about it. So, you know, I just refuse to teach people anything remotely Western art music, you know, stuff. I just don't, I can't pretend to do that because I never sing that repertoire and I never use my voice in that way. And conversely, if you are a classical specialist and you haven't actually used your voice in a belt setup, then it's probably best not to teach that because you haven't actually experienced that feeling in your body. So I think, you know, it applies in both camps. There's no differentiation there. It's just if you don't make the sounds, then it's very difficult for you to teach those things to other people.
And what do you, as a singing teacher, if you have, you know, someone come to you and say, look, I want to do music theatre, for example. I want to do more of the classic versions of music theatre, say Phantom of the Opera or Les Miserables. What do you find, how do you find yourself responding to that as a contemporary singing teacher?
Well, I think legit singing is part of the contemporary bag. You know, I see it as coming under that umbrella. And I did actually, because I hadn't done a lot of that myself, I did spend a lot of my time when I was doing postgraduate stuff trying to get a handle on that type of repertoire, and took lots of lessons from Paul Sabey, actually, who's now the head of music theatre there. I had private lessons with him to get a handle on legit singing so that I could feel like I could teach it at a certain level, up to a certain level. So I was prepared to make the sounds and give it a go. I wouldn't say I was, you know, the best exponent of it or anything like that, but I knew what it felt like and I knew what I was listening for when I was trying to get a student to make those types of sounds. So I would be happy to teach people that style of singing up to a certain point, but if they were looking to be, you know, semi-professional or professional, then I would have to pass them on to someone else.
Yeah.
Because that's not my real area of specialty.
Yeah. It's been awesome to talk to you today, and there's just to close, and because we've been going for 20 minutes, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
No, not at all. There is so much more that you and I could talk about, and I'm hoping that we'll get the opportunity to talk about things again in the future. But I do want to just close with 3 questions I'm planning, because this is my first ever specialist session. And I do want to close off with 3 questions I'm planning to ask everyone as we finish up each session. And that is, the first one is, what is your worst ever performance experience?
Well,
are you happy to reveal your worst ever performance experience?
Yeah, like, you know, people will probably think, oh, well, that's not that bad. But at the time, it felt really awful. And I'm sorry to say it wasn't that long ago. But at the beginning of the year, I had a friend of mine, Bianca Urbino, who's a Brazilian singer, guitarist, and music singing teacher. She was in Australia and recorded an EP together. And we did a little album launch for that. And at that particular launch, we had 3 different guitars. They were all tuned differently. It was all a bit complicated. And when we started the first song, I could not hear the key.
Was this the one that you did live online?
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
and I hope I think it's not available anymore because of this very reason. I mean, I just couldn't hear where I was supposed. You know, I could not hear do. I didn't know how to start it. I was very disoriented. And then she stopped and you know, she started again, but she had started playing in the wrong key. She was confused about the tuning on the guitar and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, I just felt so disoriented by that experience that it probably took me about 20 minutes to kind of get over it. And then I ended up enjoying myself, but I just felt so shamed by it, you know. And really, look, it wasn't particularly my fault. It wasn't her fault. It was just one of those things. And you just think, oh, you know, after singing for so long, these things shouldn't happen, but they do.
They do.
You know?
Live performance and live to YouTube. I was watching that performance, and I'm happy to be able to tell you, I didn't pick it, Mel. I was completely unaware that happened. So there you go.
Well, apparently I picked a key and I stuck to it, but it wasn't the key that she was playing in. So we actually stopped and we said, let's start again.
Well, I think there's a lesson in that for everyone, and that is that, you know, often what you are experiencing is far more accentuated than what the audience is able to observe. And I got a pretty good ear, and I didn't pick up on it. So there you go. Maybe if I look back and you've pointed it out, I would, but it, you know, it may not have been as bad as you thought. The second one, especially given that you're, you know, a singing voice specialist yourself, what's your pet exercise? What do you love to see? What do you use yourself, and what do you give to students all the time?
Well, I really think the one concept and exercise that really changed the way that I thought about singing really was Jeannie's concept of isolating the registers. So, you know, she basically argues that most people don't spend time really strengthening each register in isolation. And so she gets people to sing just held tones in pure chest voice, or chesty chest as she calls it, and then to sing isolated held tones on in head voice. So the idea of isolating the registers is the thing that I would start with on every person.
Okay, can you give us a quick example?
Yeah, so on when you're isolating chest, you sing the vowels O and R because they give you the best chesty response in the mechanism. So O, ah, and then you can do O, ah, that kind of thing.
Right.
And E, ooh, E. And it's as simple as that.
We just had a small drop out there. Can you do that second one for us again?
Okay, so this is just isolated head on oo and e. Ooh, e.
Great.
So it's pretty simple stuff, but it's absolutely fundamental.
I am a great believer. You know, we see a lot of exercises these days that are rather complex. And unnecessarily so, and it's more often than not, the simple exercises that get the best results.
Yeah, and look, I think that this idea of held tones is something that goes way back to, you know, bel canto techniques. So it's nothing. There's nothing new under the sun, but people don't spend enough time doing those simple things.
And to finish off, what would be the number one piece of advice you would give to developing singers, people who are, you know, starting out, they sing at maybe perhaps an amateur level, and they're really wanting to progress their singing? What's the number one piece of advice you'd want to give them? Consistent practice. And whilst that seems to be stating the absolute bleeding obvious, most people don't do it. And if you want to improve on anything, you have to be consistent over time, consistent and regular. And I think that people get very frustrated because they don't see results, but if they're going to be honest with themselves, they haven't committed to consistent over time, over a period of time, a schedule of practice. And, you know, people know that in theory, but it's very hard to put it into practice. This learning to sing thing is a slow burn, isn't it? You know, because we're working with a biological instrument that takes time to develop, you know, the muscle memories. And I often say to students, you know, because new students often say to me, you know, how long do you think this is going to take? And I often say, well, how long do you think it'd take to learn the piano, you know, to a level of competency, or the violin, or even the guitar? What, you know, and there seems to be an expectation around voice that, you know, it should really happen really quickly, and it simply doesn't. And most certainly, I 100% agree with you. It's that consistency, that regular practice that you know, hits the home runs. There's a great book, it's actually available PDF on the internet, called Mastery. I think it's George Leonard.
And it's about, I think he's really talking about Aikido or something like that, which is a martial art. But what he talks about in there applies to anything that you want to get better at. And what he says is that the people who gain mastery over any skill have done it consistently over a long period of time. And that's the answer.
It's the old 10,000 hour rule, isn't it? Yeah, which seems to be a pretty well-known thing now. If you want to be the expert in anything, it's 10,000 hours. It's probably more. I think it's taken me, I'm still on the journey of becoming proficient in my singing myself.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
I think we all are.
it has been awesome talking with you, and I know you, but I got to know some more things about you, which is fabulous. And of course, I'll just wrap up now by saying to people who have taken the time to watch this, I'll click over to here just so that we can finish off. It's here at Voice Essentials. I'm just so keen to help you develop your voice and improve your sound. And these specialist sessions are designed to give you access to experts in voice from across not only Australia, but across the world. I've got a number of colleagues from all over the place and that I'm going to be interviewing in the future. So, look, if you'd love to have access to this information, then I really encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel here at Voice Essentials. And of course, there's a whole heap of other learning materials there as well. So make sure you check them out. But until the next Voice Essentials video, I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.